Hello, thanks for clicking this video. My name is James and I attended Berklee College of Music from 2000 to 2004. I graduated with degrees in music business and guitar performance. So, was my Berklee education worth it? Overall, yes. Mine was. I was very fortunate to be able to attend Berklee. Overall, my experience was a positive one, and I'm proud to have finished. But I've often reflected on my time there and what were the best and worst parts, so I'm going to share that, and hopefully it'll be helpful to the younger generation. So, we'll start with the best things. The best courses I took at Berklee were the standard curriculum ear training and harmony courses. These were often controversial. Many people complain about them because the usual argument is you don't have to know those things to be a good musician. And that's true, but it sure is easier when you are good at them. For ear training, I always wondered why you wouldn't want to be good at that, because if you can hear music at a high level without having to physically play it, that's a superpower. So I always applied myself in those courses. I never had ear training prior to Berklee, and when I got there and realized that that was a skill you could learn, I was all in. So I was very serious about those courses. I also practiced on my own in the computer lab with ear training programs. And after I'd finished the 4 semesters, I went beyond that and took 2 more semesters of advanced ear training. And 1 semester of that with Roberta Radley, look her up if she's still there, that may have been the best course I ever took, because she was an excellent teacher and really helped us understand how to hear and isolate the different parts of a song. And I came out of Berklee with never perfect pitch, I've never developed that, but very good relative pitch. And I've used it to this day in everything that I do, whether I'm learning music for gigs, I'm transcribing songs for students, or trying to write my own music and able to take what I hear in my head and translate it into actual music without having to play it sometimes. And it's an excellent skill. So, very useful. Harmony. Once again, a lot of people complain about this, say, you don't have to know this to be a good player. Yeah, that's true, but unless you're one of those rare geniuses who just effortlessly crafts out brilliance, you're probably going to need to have tools in your musical arsenal. And I certainly did. I was not a genius. And I realized that the more you understand those tools, the easier it is. I came into Berklee thinking that the writing of music, because I want to be a composer, and I had this perception that creating music comes from some sort of mysterious cosmic inspiration. And there is certainly inspiration, but it's also a craft. And like any craft, it has tools. If you learn the tools, the craft is a lot easier. And you're a much more fluent musician when you can understand the music that you're learning. If someone else wrote it, you can see what the composer's intentions were. And if you're writing it, you're removing the chance and the luck. You have tools to make music quickly. So, very useful courses. I also use that to this day. The best advice I ever got from a private teacher was from my guitar teacher, John Finn. I think he's still there, so definitely look him up. One day I had finally grasped this concept I had been struggling with, and then was kind of getting down on myself for not understanding it sooner. But he said, well, you understand when you're ready. And it was probably a throwaway comment from him, but it's really stuck with me. And I've found that to be, it's meant more to me over the years. As a continual student myself, but also now as a teacher, you can't force understanding of anything. It just has to happen when it's time. And music is like any discipline. You have to really apply yourself and just commit to the process. Just like you can't force your muscles to grow in the gym, it takes consistent training. Music is the same way. You have to be a good student who is committed to the long term and doing the work. And then if you do that, eventually you'll get it. Okay, my worst courses, least favorite. The worst things I took at Berklee were the standard curriculum, traditional harmony and counterpoint. We could call that, air quoting, classical harmony, which is separate from the standard harmony, which was like jazz harmony. So classical harmony and counterpoint. Everyone had to take 2 semesters of those. The irony here is I came from a classical background. I still love classical music, but I've never used any of that. It was a struggle to take them because it was all about following rules. And I just could not see how you could be creative with all these restrictions on you. And especially as a guitar player who's into rock and metal, the first thing they say is, well, you can't, parallel fifths and octaves aren't allowed. And you're like, wait, I can't play power chords, but I hear them literally everywhere. How can they be wrong? So, I struggled mightily through those. I've never used any of it. And related to that would be conducting. Everyone had to take 2 semesters of that. Never used any. Never conducted anyone or been conducted to. Now, from the Berklee's perspective, I assume that they're trying to present all of the standard musical concepts that a musician might need because they're trying to create well-rounded musicians. So they have to cover everything. But if anyone from the Berklee administration is watching this, I propose reserve those courses for higher level specified study within the majors that are most likely to use them. So last I checked, there are now 15 undergraduate majors at Berklee, but only 4 of them are composition focused. So save it for them. I think most students aren't going to need that much traditional harmony, counterpoint, or conducting. Maybe 1 semester of each, but I think that's enough. Okay, things I wish I had learned. First thing would be personal finance. And you may be wondering, what does that have to do with music? Well, personal finance is just a life skill that every grown-up should have. In fact, that should be standard curriculum at every college in the country, if not high school. You need to know it, but especially musicians need to know it because you're probably not going to make a lot of money in music, at least initially and maybe your whole life. I certainly have not. I love music, but it doesn't make me rich. And I had a really interesting experience recently. I went to a concert and one of the performers turned out to be someone that I knew. So they invited me to come out to dinner with the group. All the performers and organizers were going out to eat. And that was really nice. And so I got to go with them. And I'm sitting at a table with all these high-level players, some of whom have prestigious performing careers or they're faculty at major universities. And I was a little intimidated at first, but it wore off because we're all talking about the same things, which is get more work, whether it was getting more gigs and more students or whatever. We're all equals. We're all living the same musical grind. And if anyone was rich, it wasn't obvious. We're eating at this mid-level restaurant, just talking about the same stuff. And there's a romanticization of the starving artist. You've got to struggle and suffer to make great art, but that's not true in my experience. Trying to be creative when you're struggling to get by is really hard. In fact, it sucks. If you want to be creative, what you need is stability. You need to know that your rent is paid, the food's in the fridge, the car is running, all the bills are taken care of. Then you have the freedom to be artistic, because when you're just, I know for myself, when I was just thinking, man, how am I going to pay the rent? I mean, forget art, forget passion. I was working anything. It's not a good way to live. So learn to manage your money. All right, next thing I wish I learned, music production. And this is huge. When I was at Berklee, the idea of recording yourself at a high level on your own, that was new. Pro Tools is still just a few years old. Now, fast forward to today, the technology is so advanced and so accessible. It appears to me that it's now industry standard. You must be able to record yourself at least a high demo quality. And I know that, and especially if you want to write music as I do, and I know that my inability to do that has really held me back. It's cost me work and slowed me down, and I'm trying to play catch up now in my 40s and learn these skills. But meanwhile, teenagers can record albums in their bedroom and win Grammys for them. That's something I think we all need. At least be able to record your own instrument at a high demo quality. That should be taught at every music school. And related to that, next thing I wish I learned would be independent promotion strategies. When I was coming up, the idea of promoting yourself with the internet wasn't really a thing yet, because the internet was new and social media barely existed. Once again, 20 years later, we live in a different world. The whole world is run through the internet and social media, and especially music. So you've got to know how to navigate that. It should be offered, I think, through the curriculum of the school. If the school is claiming to teach the most up-to-date knowledge, that should be part of it. So once again, if anyone from the Berklee administration is watching, that's my suggestion there. Okay, now some things that I'm glad I did. First thing is I finished all my general education credits through community college before I got to Berklee. After I finished high school, I took a year at my local community college. For me, the motivation was just to practice more, really, but it had a much greater impact in that I came into Berklee with the equivalent of a third semester student, credits-wise. But I was only taking the first semester music courses, so it meant that every semester I had my first pick of the courses I wanted, which was awesome. And then also financially, it saved a lot of money. And this is a good point to acknowledge. I didn't pay for my college education myself. My family did, and I appreciate that so much more now as a grown-up. But a wonderful family who had the foresight to save for my college education and then supported me going to a music school. As long as I was serious and worked hard, they were willing to pay for it, which I certainly was. But if you don't have that luxury, you're paying out of pocket or taking out loans or hustling for scholarships. Well, this is a really good strategy to help yourself. Get your general education credits done before you actually get to Berklee. Let's see, next thing I did that was really good. I never took a summer off. I didn't want to take summers off because I liked Berklee. I liked being there. I was a music geek. I didn't want to take a break. It was a good opportunity to meet some new people in a more relaxed atmosphere, and you can get certain credits done faster. If there's some courses maybe that you're not crazy about, but you got to get through them, well, the summer is a good way. But be careful, because you're condensing a normal 16 weeks into 12. So make sure you're picking stuff won't be too hard. One time I took Harmony 4 over a summer, and that was really tough. I wish I'd saved that for later. Another thing that I was really glad I did, I worked on the school film crew. I had to get a job, and that's where I wound up. I didn't ask for it, but that ended up being super cool because I got paid to watch shows. And certainly there were times it was boring or tedious or overly stressful, but I think any job is, and I would rather it have been you watching music than working a retail job or something. I got to see so many shows that I never would have otherwise, from really big names to just student performances, but I learned so much just from watching so many different performers. So that was working on the film crew, and another good thing could be working on stage crews. All right, now things that I should have done. The first thing, I really wish I networked and collaborated more. Berklee is where you're meeting your future professional colleagues. So you don't want to just lock yourself up in a practice room all day. I mean, obviously you're going to practice, but you could practice 8 hours a day for 4 years, and you might be a virtuoso after that. But if you don't know anybody and no one knows you, it doesn't matter. And someone who's not as good as you, but actually is social and has made friends and contacts, they're going to do better. And I went into Berklee with this laser focus of forming the next great heavy metal band. And I felt like I had to meet the people, the right people, to write the songs and form the band. Because I was modeling myself after Dream Theater and U2, where these people meet when they're young and they're still the same people are still together 20, 30 years later. But that's actually not normal. That's so rare. I mean, that's like going into any new relationship saying this has to be the person that I marry. Well, that's not realistic, because they're probably not the person you're going to marry. But it doesn't mean you shouldn't have the relationship just for the experience and learn from whatever happens. And collaboration is the same thing. I was, for first half of Berklee, I worked hard on forming a band, and I never found the right people. And then I just gave up and said, I'm just going to be the best Berklee student. But I was missing one of the major parts of Berklee. collaborating, meeting people, collaborating, playing other styles of music that maybe are out of your comfort zone. Like, it's a huge opportunity, and it's not going to hold you back. It's going to make you better. So I really wished I had done that more. Related to that, I wish I had taken more ensemble versus labs. In the curriculum, they are what's called ensemble classes, where you're playing in some kind of a band, and then labs where you're just like studying a concept, a technique. So on a practical level, ensembles are worth more credits, so that's obviously more beneficial. But related to what I said about collaborating, I should have been trying to play in other groups. And one thing that really held me back in hindsight was that I was just very insecure. I didn't feel like I played at that level, and I was like, I got to practice more. I'm not ready to play in a group. I need to be in the practice room. College is the time to face your insecurities, because once you're out in the professional world and you say, you went to Berklee, well, people have an expectation that you're going to be at a certain level. So while you're at Berklee, it's a time to deal with your insecurities and your weaknesses. You should be running to them, and it probably will be painful and might be embarrassing, but you need to deal with them. And I wish I had done that then. Next thing I wish I'd done, as far as practicing goes, practice with a focus on consistency over quantity. And what I mean by that is, don't put an unrealistic expectation of practicing a ridiculous number of hours every day. And probably all musicians, we've heard stories of such and such a person doing 8 hours a day, 10 hours a day, 12 hours every day. But I think for most of us in our daily life, and certainly at a music school, you don't have that with all your other stuff. I would love to get one of those people who supposedly does 10 hours a day and get a drink in number two and say, okay, are you really doing that every day? Okay, and for how long? All right, do you have a job? Okay, do you have a girlfriend? Do you have any kind of social life? Because you can't maintain anything for that many hours a day and still be a healthy, functional human. So rather than that, going back to the long-term thing, focus on just the consistency of practicing. It's okay if you can only do maybe 2 hours some days. As long as you're doing it every day, the consistency is what is most important. And some days you can do, you'll do many. There were times I could practice up to 8 hours a day, but it's because I had nothing else. I had no classes that day. I didn't have a job. I definitely didn't have a girlfriend. I had minimal social life, so I could shut myself in a room for 8 hours, but it didn't always make me happy. And also keep in mind that there's more to musical development than just time in your practice room. Like all those other courses, remember the harmony, the ear training, the ensembles, it all counts as musical development, all right? So it's not just about time in the practice room. All that's valuable as well. Let's see, another thing I really wish I'd done. I wish I'd gotten a master's. For me, majoring in music business was a mistake. And that's not because there's anything wrong with studying music business, but I never had any intention to actually work in the business side of music. I just wanted the knowledge. My goal was to be a player. But 20 years later, pretty much any question I have about business, I can find in a few minutes with a Google search. Getting the degree in it was, it wasn't worth it. If I was going to get that much education, I should have just focused it into a master's. That would have looked better on paper and helped me out a lot more later on than having a dual major. So something to think about. If you're thinking of getting a dual major, think hard about it. Masters might be better. And last thing that I should have done is I wish I had just been bolder with my dream. I had dreams of rock stardom. When I graduated Berklee, I had these new degrees and I wasn't attached to anything. I was single. I didn't have a job lined up yet, but and I had some money, but I just stayed in Boston. I also didn't have a plan. Like I had all these things going for me, but I also didn't have a plan. So I figured I'll just stay in Boston. And I justified it as like, well, I know it, and there's opportunity here. I can do it here. But honestly, a lot of it was I was just afraid to really take a big leap. And I've often wondered, well, what if I'd gone to one of the big music cities? Try to make a career there, LA, Nashville, or wherever. And I'll never say my life would have been better because I don't know that. I have a great life now, and I could have stepped into Nashville and gotten run over by a bus or any number of other awful things. But I just wish that I had appreciated the position I was in at the time. It might be silly to run off to the big city and chase big dreams of stardom, but if there's a time to do it, that's it. When you're young and unattached, as you get older, it doesn't get easier, it gets harder. Okay, just miscellaneous observations. First thing is great players don't automatically make great teachers. Funny story, I saw Al Di Meola give a clinic. He's a very famous jazz fusion guitar player, if you haven't heard of him, great virtuoso. And I asked a question, how did he visualize the fretboard? Very eager to hear what someone like him would have to say. And his answer was, I just see it, man. And that was it. That's all I got. That wasn't very helpful to me. At Berklee, I saw some people who were phenomenal players, but they weren't always good at explaining it to me and helping me become better. Good teaching isn't necessarily about how much you know, but about how well you can explain it to someone who doesn't know. And the best teachers for me were the ones who were patient and analytical and could really break down the concepts to a level that I could understand it and explain to me how to work on it. And they never played anything in front of me unless it was to demonstrate. No one, they didn't show off. You got to find a teacher you have good chemistry with who can explain it well. It's not about how well they can play. And then last thing, big thing, Berklee is what you make of it. I came into Berklee thinking that it would be this musical boot camp because that was sort of the impression I'd been given. It wasn't, though. It was generally a very relaxed atmosphere. No one ever was breathing down my neck to make sure that I practiced. No one ever yelled at me for hitting a wrong note. I met plenty of slacker, unmotivated students. I saw bad performances. And just being at Berklee doesn't necessarily mean that you're good or mean that you're going to do great things. You have to take the initiative, and if you do that, there's incredible opportunities. There's so much knowledge there. There's so many resources and opportunity to meet people, but it's on you to make that happen. So I hope that's been helpful. Feel free to leave a comment if you have something to say, and thanks for watching.